the first to know Nsem-Pii TV.
Dr. Mahmudu Bawumia any BBC journalist baako agrante interview na interview no yɛba ne abɛbɔ the full video de akyerɛw a ɛnyɛ asɛm kotoa na interview no journalist no issues a ɔkaa sɛ ɔne Dr. Mahmudu Bawumia ɛba abɛkasa afa ho deɛ ɛdi kan ɛyɛ one, how to improve internationally generated revenue in Africa. 2, digitalization. 3, trade. 4, artificial intelligence. And final, human capital development in Africa. Na otimi ane Dr. Mahmudu Bawumia ewie nkɔmɔkyekye no na ɔhwɛ nsɛm a Dr. Mahmudu Bawumia etimi ehyia gu hɔ na owie tie journalist no asɛm a ɔde atu edwa. Or say, I am 100% convinced that if he is given the chance to lead the country, he assemble his own team and free to execute his ideas, Ghana will be different. Na nsembe na Dr. Mahmudu Bawumia edi etu dwa etimi ekenya journalist a otimi edi saa nsɛm wei etu edwa yenkɔ Dr. Mahmudu Bawumia wabra na ɔtwetwe nkɔmɔ no.
It's not everywhere that we have the personnel in terms of the teachers and all of that. And in fact, even in teaching, you need to be, the information out there is so much, the research out there is so much that with tools, you can get succinct, summaries of where the research stands in various areas. And you can use it as a teacher to teach your students. Similar with the doctors, they cannot cope with all the most recent information. They can get it using artificial intelligence to get the best. So I think that, and the same with agriculture, you can help. So I think that if we focus it in some of these key areas, Africa can really benefit. And one of the things that I have always said in the area of technology, digital technology, AI, and all of that, is that Africa comes to the table with no legacy systems. we don't have a bed. And so we can make those changes and leapfrog in many areas that the developed countries will find it difficult. So we should not use the developed countries as a measure of what we do. We have to chart our own course. We have to chart our own course because they have a different set of facts on the ground to begin with from us. So different horses for different courses, as Draka would say. So we've got to not be intimidated.
The late Calisius Juma, actually, of blessed memory here teaching at the Kennedy School, has made that point that even the developed countries now has things to learn from Africa. Now, this brings me to the elephant in the room, energy.
Yes.
More than half of the African population do not have access to energy. So how do you harness the potential of artificial intelligence and other technologies when electricity is not available? What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you very much. It's a very, very important question. I mean, there are about 900 million people in the world without access to electricity. And about 600 million of them, about 72% of that or so, is in sub-Saharan Africa.
Not just Africa, but
sub-Saharan Africa. And I mean, if you look at energy consumption around the world, in sub-Saharan Africa, it's about 180 kilowatt per capita. It's 180 per kilowatt hour. In the US, it's 13,000 consumption per kilowatt hour. In Europe, it's about 6,500, consumption. So we are at 180, right? And so you see the direct relationship between our energy consumption and economic development. Ours is so low because without energy, you cannot do so many things, in transport, health, in education, agriculture. There's so much that requires energy. If digitalization, artificial intelligence, all those things that we want to do require energy. So it's a big issue for Africa and how we are able to deal with this elephant in the room. my own experience with our situation in Ghana, and when you look at what is happening across the continent in South Africa, in Nigeria, and so on. First of all, we have to make sure that the utilities are financially viable. The lack of viability of our utilities is a major problem, because if the utilities are not viable, they are not able to make the investments that are required. And you know that with the energy sector, the lead time for investment is about 4 years before you actually need the energy. And so if you don't put in the investment early on, but if your utilities are making losses, they are not cost recovering, you have a major problem to start with in that sector. In the utility sector, I think the World Bank estimates that we need about 20 billion annually for the next 10 years or so for us to close the gap, right, on electricity. And so if you don't have that incentive for the private sector, because a lot of this investment must come in from the private sector.
How do you energize the private sector?
Exactly. But if they see a loss-making enterprise, they're not likely to invest. So that is one thing that we have to be careful and very deliberate on, to make sure that there is viability of our utilities. The other thing that we have to do, because we are working individually in countries, it is very important, because some places we have different comparative advantages. There are some parts of the continent where there's more hydro, some parts where there's more gas. But so it requires a deliberate strategy to integrate our utilities. And not only to integrate the utilities, but to integrate the power and diversify the power generation mix towards more green energy. You need to diversify towards more solar, towards more hydro on the continent. We are blessed with a lot of sun. And many places in the Sahel, for example, that you can really leverage solar energy, for example. So I think that the integration of our utilities is going to be very, very important, as well as making sure that there's financial viability and encouraging the private sector to come in to invest in the sector. I think
that's quite interesting. And this brings me to my last question. There is a lot of interest from countries, China, United States, Europe, Africa Conference, Africa this, Africa that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that we have to work collectively together.
Right.
But how is Africa sit at the table during these negotiations? What are your thoughts on African countries, especially the regional blocs, negotiating in trying to bring this private, sector into Africa to go as a bloc so that they can have a better deal than going alone, so that Africa's voice is much bigger and stronger?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes without saying that we deserve, as a continent, a seat at the table. I mean, we are a major contributor to the development of this world, in terms of our resources, in terms of our population, and so on. We definitely do deserve a seat at the table. And of course, we are a major bloc. The African Continental Free Trade Area has been set up with over 1 billion in population and 3 trillion that we have put together. And so it gives us some marketing power, some negotiating power at the table, if we recognize it. Right? You may have the power, but you may still work in very much silos, but once we can recognize and negotiate on the basis of our market power, I think that the rest of the world will listen. So it is in recognizing that we have this to do if we're going into energy, because we have to get our own act together before the world will listen to us. Yeah, I mean, if we go in a lot of the current circumstances, we will not be listened to. But we must be taken seriously, right? And to be taken seriously, we have to do the things that make sense for us to do, and then come together as a bloc to negotiate for very, very important concessions for the continent.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think I have to negotiate an exit from the interview because it's my time. Yes. It's really a pleasure to have you, Your Excellency, to have this conversation.
So much, Dr.
And we
Jamil.
look forward to receiving you at the Africa Policy Journal in the future.
I look forward to that.
Yes.
This has been a very good experience.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the conversation with the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Bawumia, with the Africa Policy Journal. On behalf of all those who contributed in making this interview a success, especially our team.
Say no, Dr. Bawumia can say omudi bibi eba. Your friend no personal credit scoring mebua. Anya sa na e friend no na ababe ye adwuma. Na sa adwumadi no eyade bia na mu wede beba no eso. Ba nipa bi mpese Ghana fo bi hunti ya sha ase etumfuturo egun krofo ani. Asante bo amena ye ni NPP chairperson ewo UK. Any and Komakakra, Obaya, Mika UK, UK de Ofaki, and US, and any Obaya, any Komakakra, no Omwine, say bet me at the Sa 7 say, and the break on any mono, if you consider your wedding, Komono in Chichimu, Ediaba, Madam Chairperson, and can, Emma.
No, any other role, Nejoso, Alopay.
The Bachona, who you did.
Adia science about 2:30, 2:23 a.m.
2:28. Yes, Adia. I see. You now Dr. Bawumia Eden Sebi Eba. The BB be a friend of personal credit scoring system. I de be yena yetimi amankrofo. They to create me the Ghana card. Atoka, efia car, atuyaka. Anyasem ketwa you will be at a pie aji ho nyasem e bi kran timi en na nwene ho say how is that possible say obetim the Ghana card akwa car and all that mo de mo ti aburuchi and sa system nya foforo mamo sa ade no madam Roma e de ade na kwan ben na fa so mo de adwuma ho na ibetima ye bi o Ghana ha na
yo minia we de mega lecture one of pay na machia o T4 no ahwefo nyina na pay yo de ya kan na mo se ataju ene ya ti de Ghana for matide credit scoring system ya dia idea ka and say Ghana de yen fa ni agope nti ama ayen ko fa di mu kesne say enye bi kra ya possible but yeah tiago chire na me bompa say want to me any other stations no more be devoted time no more struggle chire for na yet na check countries o mu use sa system no na yet na chim na Ghana fo anya tiatie say ya dia o ti na ye so Dr. Bawumia mu ye so na sene na sa adi o timba etimi di ba Ghana na Ghana fo ahotse o mu wom ana say sika emprebre omsi ni ombotum no etimi ede ahihie di bla wom amom ahodo America ha credit score ye hia because osha enyo ye sika ye adwuma ye nya no krom ha eni edi obi edi no krom ha so fa ko dan na edan ni ye about $500,000 wakati ya udi na timunum nyina no endu sa sika no a betimi ja ko dan and so much is sending me be a o to ama obi a paso oto dan obi o paso oto car na katia a onya na timu na appointment to car no appointment to dan no ya di be man na wo chichen kakaka go in say e ma kakaka facilities kakaka within a period of 30 years 15 years 5 years ubet met ya based on sika onya no bosumi bia na this credit scoring no aba ntu a number bia ya di month wo bureau sa ya di side medie na ahye omunsa nti ne ya di number na amount Na number no that says we are credit wealthy as an individual. So we nipa bia ubobisia utia no on time. Ya ka say bia 15th bia na say utia okana 15th so utia na those record mount kaka na empebibua kano wokra ekanimu afa anyhow bosome bia utia no fe udi hu ni enti wo ye we nyina no na ye wo bureaus bia omonso I was called bia o masese wo ho ni ya tutu ho ni ya grade you nti ese wo hwe we ya payment history so payment history good so bosome bia so na so utia no mane mpa ho so mane pa ho dey later ekutia wo so utia no before and after during the time also utia na wow and no omo percentage I assign to sa number no where 35% for credit history and na oka wo dede wo car loan na utia wo dan car utia what line of credit credit card da bia wutu kwan na osika o pay nso a wo credit bi wo card so wetin da photo plane ticket na ya kona o dwetwe kaka and also the share no ani okay no so 30% they assign to say nti wo tu huni na wo ye kai ye wo sika na wo gene na build credit papa the amount say ya enko ba say wo ye sika ko to da kokofa o dai bi pepe ana wo fom pepe papa ba tia wa anka ne ma loan no e bi enu afi ho nti ya dia o se Ghana fo ni se ye bi digi e wo Ghana America ha 3 credit bureaus omo ye aduma na omo nyina score omo different score for libudina no omo di access so and the boy ye Ghana for America for na ye to omo krum ha no omo timi di ye nyema kesa o krum ha because on ko tam sika boom no da koya de for no nti na o di o twetwa no kaka o di in a period of time mostly a dying mostly between 15 to 30 years to be